Robin Brandt with Pacific Basin Rehabilitation Research and Training Center, and we'd like to thank you for attending our video conference to give you information about Hawaii Disability Rights Center. It is a statewide center, and it provides services to people throughout Hawaii, not just Oahu. There are representatives on some islands. I'm going to turn this over to two of Hawaii Disability Rights Center staff. We have Dwight Ovett and Howard Lesser.
And a very pleasant good morning to all the folks who are tuning in on our webinar this morning. My name is Howard Lesser. I'm an advocate with Hawaii Disability Rights, and I'm here with Dwight Ovett.
Good morning.
And so let's get started. And at the end of our presentation, feel free to ask us any. We'll schedule some time in so that you can ask any questions. I also want to point out that this is confidential. If if you feel that there's any question you might have or questions that are of a personal nature and you don't want to share them during this webinar, feel free to contact us, and we'll be giving you our contact information very shortly. Okay, let the show begin here. Okay, so we are known as the Hawaii Disability Rights Center. In federal statute, federal law, we're known as the Protection and Advocacy System, P&A. So for many, many years we were known as P&A until we decided the word advocacy wasn't appropriate. We call ourselves Hawaii Disability Rights Center, or HDRC. Most of our funding, I'd say about 98% of our funding, is federal. We get a very, very small chunk of change from the state. Even though that our funding is mostly government funded, we are a private nonprofit agency. Our mission is to protect the human, civil, and legal rights of persons with disabilities. And I'd like to point out that all of our services are free of charge. We do not charge for any of our services. Okay? So you might be wondering how to get our services, how to get HDRC services. We have an intake advocate. And if you want to determine whether or not you're eligible, or you just have a question, or you think that you might require our assistance, you would contact our intake advocate. And you can do this by phone, or more and more we're seeing email appointments. I'd say about 10% of all my cases are handled through email. It's quick, it's easy. Now to talk about intake, we have intake hours, and that is Monday through Friday from 9 in the morning to 12 noon, and then give us a chance to break for lunch, and then we come back from 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. And of course, we're all closed all federal and most state holidays. Okay, so for those of you who might be interested in contacting our agency, we have our street address above. It's 1132 Bishop Street, Suite 2102, Honolulu, Hawaii 96813. We have a TDD phone, and we also have a fax. Our phone number is 949-2922, and you can ask to speak to the intake worker. You can also ask to speak to Howard or Dwight. Dwight works mostly in the mornings, but I work till 4:30. And we also have a fax number up there, 949-2928. And we have a toll-free number for any of those who are listening or watching on the neighbor islands. It's a toll-free number, 1-800-882-1057. And then our email address is this is all one word, HawaiiDisabilityRights.org. You can also contact us on the web at info@HawaiiDisabilityRights.org. So all this information is listed on all of the brochures that we publish. There's a picture of our beautiful brochures. Okay, and now we'll introduce you to Dwight.
My name is Dwight Ovitt, and I am actually a person with traumatic brain injury, which I didn't know about until I started working with the organization a few years ago. I fell on my head when I was a young child, was in a coma for several days, and when I recovered from that, I didn't remember anything before that, but I did have some issues which I didn't understand were related to that about remembering. For those of you who may have traumatic brain injury, remembering is a big problem that we all have, and I didn't realize that it was from traumatic brain injury, but I trying to learn a foreign language, trying to remember phone numbers, trying to remember names was always difficult for me. And then I realized, oh, that's from my traumatic brain injury. Well, anyway, let me tell you about what we can do for those of you who have TBI or traumatic brain injury. Because we are federally funded, we are advocates for people with TBI as well as other issues as well. And we basically are focusing on getting services to you that are not available or inadequate. And but we have been working with traumatic brain injured folks for quite a few years. I'm not sure exactly the total number, longer than I've been with the organization. But if you have TBI, feel free to contact us. You do have our contact information. If you want to talk to me personally, I have another direct line, but I don't want to confuse you with numbers, so just stay with the number that you already have. This morning I want to talk about PAVA, which is Protection and Advocacy for Voters, and this is for everyone. We are really concerned that our people with disabilities register to vote and do vote, so we can help you in that process. And it's important to both register and then ask for an accommodation. Some of you folks may need an accommodation when you vote, and there's a special person at every voting site that can help you with that. But in terms of registering, there are certain things that you need to do, and you need to fill out a wiki form, and this is the form right here. This is the wiki form, and there's 3 things you need to be to register to vote. You must be a citizen of the United States, a resident of the state of Hawaii, and at least 16 years old, but you must be 18 by the election day to vote. But they can allow you to vote, to register if you're 16. So that wiki form is an important form to have. If you don't have one, there should be one in your phone book. Every phone book has a wiki form in it, and if you don't get one there, you have to call your county clerk's office to get those, and I have those numbers later. But the wiki form is an important form to register. Voting this year, there's a primary election taking place on August 11th, which is on a Saturday. You should receive a yellow card within the next few days, maybe a week. They're delaying it a little bit because there's been a lot of changes this year because of the census, and they had to change voting locations. But the primary election is scheduled for August 11th. The deadline to register for that was July 12th, was a few days ago. So if you haven't registered to vote for the primary election, you're going to have to wait till the general election. That deadline is November, the date of that for the election is November 6th, and the deadline is October 8th for registering to vote for the general election. So if you haven't voted before and you want to vote, get your WikiWiki form in to your county clerk, and it should have your the address for your county clerk if you're on a neighbor island. Here on Oahu, it's one address, but every neighbor island has their own clerks. So you need to set that date by October 8th to get into the general election. There are some other forms. Those of you who, instead of going to vote at the location, at the precinct, some of you may choose to do absentee voting. And if you're going to do absentee voting, there is a form that you need to complete, and that needs to be submitted by August 4th for the primary and October 30th for the general election. That goes to your county clerk, and this is the form in front of you that you need to complete. There's both what we call it absentee voting and then a permanent one as well. For those of you who don't move very often or don't plan to change a name, you might want to do a permanent absentee voting, and then they will always remember to send us to you so you can vote at home. But if you decide to go and vote at the precinct, and some of you may choose to do this, I've actually worked in several precincts and I know the process pretty well. It's important to know that you have the ability to bring someone with you to help you if you have difficulty on your own. You can bring a family member, you can bring a friend, you can't bring your boss. Your boss is not allowed to work with you on this, but you can bring a friend to help you vote, and when you get to the precinct, just tell them that you need some help, that you want an accommodation because of your disability. There are some, there's even a special voting machine there for folks with disabilities that I don't have a picture of here, but there will be one at each of the precincts if you want to get some special help with that as well. Just remember, you're going to get a yellow postcard within the next few days. I'm not sure, I haven't gotten mine yet, and I had to change mine, but you will get one telling you where to vote. And you need to go to that location unless you're going to do absentee voting. So that's what I want to tell you about voting. Now I want to talk to you about advance directives. And some of you may know what an advance directive is, and some of you may not know what an advance directive is. But we recommend that everyone have an advance directive. The ones that we help people with are fairly extensive. They're around 20 pages of information, and we are set up specifically to assist anybody who is disabled to do an advance directive. It tells what medical care you want if you're incapacitated or unable to express your wishes to the doctor. It's a legal document protected by federal and state laws, and it gives you choose a health care agent to make decisions for you. The health care agent is very important to you. This can be a person of your choice, must be 18 years old or older, can be a child, can be a husband, can be a wife, can be a parent. But this is a person who's going to make decisions for you when you cannot make those decisions for yourself. So in the process of completing an advance directive, there are several questions related to healthcare agents, and you can choose one. You can have a backup as well in case something happens to your regular healthcare agent. You can have 1, 2, or even 3 healthcare agents that can work with you. And these would be directly dealing with your medical care providers, your doctors, or nurses. And by law, if you have completed an advance directive, the hospital or the doctor must follow your advance care directive. The medical care decisions, things such as the medications you're going to receive, the kind of operation, if you need an operation and so forth, will all be determined by your health care agent if you're unable to make those decisions for yourself. Just to give you a little information about how to go about and do this, just call our office and say, I would like an advance directive done for yourself, and our intake worker will refer this to one of our staff people who will be working with you, probably by phone, but maybe in person, depending on where you're located. It's a complicated situation, but it needs to be completed and needs to be notarized at the end, and it needs to be reviewed by one of our attorneys to make sure it's correct. And if you have an advance directive and you want to change it, that's possible as well. But you must be of right mind when you do that. So if you have an advance directive and you want to make any changes in it, you can go through that process with us, and we can help you with an updated advance directive as well. And the only other issue I want to talk to you about today is I have bilingual brochures in several languages, because not everybody here in the state of Hawaii and people that we work with speak English as a first language. Anyway, we have, let me tell you the brochures that we have. For the Micronesian populations, we have them in Chuukese and Marshallese. Those are the two biggest groups of Micronesians in Hawaii. We do not have them in the other Micronesian languages because most of those folks speak English, but not all of them. But the Chuukese and Marshallese, we find that large numbers of this population do not speak English well enough. So we actually have brochures in those languages. We also have them in Filipino languages, Ilocano, which is probably the majority of our immigrants to Hawaii are speakers of Ilocano, but we also have them in Tagalog as well. So for the Filipino population, we can have Ilocano or Tagalog, and we do have them in Spanish. And just to let you know, one of our intake staff speaks Spanish, and I didn't know that till the other day. I heard her speaking Spanish, and I'm going, Mary, I didn't know you spoke Spanish. And she said, yes, I do. So if you're a Spanish-speaking person and you need to communicate with us, feel free to do that in your native language and ask to speak to Mary, who is one of our intake people. So that's basically what I wanted to, let me tell you a little bit about why you want to do an advance directive. As choosing an agent, making healthcare decisions for you is probably the number one. Choosing a primary treating physician and alternate physician. Making specific choices about medical treatment. Directing whether or not how life support is to be provided, withheld or withdrawn. Directing who you would like to have notified if you're admitted to a medical facility, and directing whether or not you want to donate organs after death, and making known your preferences in medical treatment facilities. These are the primary reasons that you would want to do an advance directive. Thank you very much. I'm going to pass you back to Howard, and he can talk to you about CAP.
Thank you, Dwight. And I just want to add that the advance directives are done for free. Okay.
Yes.
So again, there's no charge for this document. And we've heard stories where people have gone to their private attorneys and paid $1,400 for a document that we don't charge anything for. I'm going to talk to you now about the Client Assistance Program that we fondly know as CAP. The CAP program, and again, this is set in federal statutes, and I think we have, I'm sorry, I have a handout here. Thanks. The CAP program is, again, mostly federally funded, and the purpose is to inform clients or applicants and other persons with disabilities about available services under CAP and benefits. The agency that is responsible in our state for helping an individual attain employment, gainful competitive employment, so that's making enough money to make a living and at least a part-time job, 20 hours a week or more, is called the Division of Vocational Rehabilitation. They're housed under the Department of Human Services in our state. And so for those individuals who are interested in getting a job, if you're found to be eligible, if you qualify for VR services, then you might have a problem getting with your VR counselor, your vocational rehabilitation counselor. And that's why you might want to contact us at the Client Assistance Program. The Client Assistance Program, or CAP, is under federal law to assist people under the Federal Rehabilitation Act of 1973. That's the federal law that funds VR and the CAP program. As I stated earlier, our mission is to protect the human, civil, and legal rights of persons with disabilities, so it follows that our agency enforces federal law. And a big federal law, not just the Rehab Act, is the Americans with Disabilities Act, Title I. So under the ADA, our agency would take a look at accommodations in the workplace to make sure that all the accommodations are provided so that you can perform work. In addition to our assistance and advocacy under CAP, we, and probably the great majority of cases that I've had as CAP director, is to resolve disputes. In other words, you want to do something and your VR counselor thinks you should be doing something else. In that case, you might want to contact us and we'll mediate any kind of disputes that you have with your VR counselor. In addition to the Division of Vocational Rehabilitation, you may be served by what we call a community rehabilitation program. That includes Easter Seals, or maybe Abilities Unlimited, or Lanakila Pacific. These are agencies, Goodwill, that assist people with employment. And under CAP, we're also authorized to mediate any disputes. Another major community rehab program is the Hawaii Centers for Independent Living. So those are agencies that we can assist under CAP. I think that pretty much covers it. So again, we want to present you with our contact information. Our services are free. Dwight and I do a lot of outreach in the community. I know that Dwight's given presentations to the Hooikaika program, and I have as well. We also meet with the Brain Injury Association at Rehab Hospital and their monthly support groups. You know, we make sure that we have a presence at most of the major conferences in town, like PAC-RIM. Some of you might have gone to PAC-RIM. We do our outreach across the state. So to that end, I think we do our best. And we also get out to the Wounded Warriors program. We are finding a lot of individuals with traumatic brain injuries contacting our office from Tripler Hospital, folks who are soldiers coming back from Iraq, Kosovo before Iraq, Afghanistan with TBI. We've represented individuals with TBI at appealing their Social Security application eligibility who have been denied, and we're largely successful in those efforts. So, you know, we aggressively outreach the community to locate individuals with TBI who might require our services. So you have the screen up before you as far as how to contact our agency, and we do encourage you to contact us. Maybe you just have a question about what you feel your rights, what your rights are, what you might be entitled to. Please feel free to call us. Again, all of the information any inquiries are handled confidentially. We're under very strict confidentiality, yet we can, with your permission, with your consent, we can have access to any and all records that may benefit you to help resolve your issues. Again, our phone number is 949-288-8255. 2922. Fax is 949-2928. We have our toll-free number up there. We have our email, www.hawaiidisabilityrights.org, and the website, info@hawaiidisabilityrights.org.
I think that's mixed up. www is the website.
No. Oh yeah, that's
the website.
That's the website.
Top one.
Sorry, everybody.
Yeah. And
That's info@Hawaii. In fact, really, if you want to email us directly, Dwight and myself, just substitute info for Howard,
or Dwight.
or eliminate Howard and info and put Dwight, and you'll be able to get Dwight directly. That's how you contact us by email. Thank you, Dwight. Okay, we're going to open it up for any kind of questions. Again, appreciate your participation in today's webinar. And maybe if you don't feel that you need our assistance, tell a friend. Okay, we have some questions up there. Okay, now the question is there a guide?
I can read it.
Okay, Robin,
Is there a guide sheet to all services presented for Hooikaika members?
Yes, that's a good question. Is there a guide sheet? We do have in our literature, our brochures, one brochure that speaks to all of the different programs, but we also have a brochure for each program, which upon request we'll be happy to send out to you. Next question. I want to make sure that question is answered. Is that okay? Oh, okay.
Type another question.
Type another question. Yeah, okay, very good. If you have a follow-up, that's fine. GoToMeeting says I muted myself. Is that okay? Of course, that's okay. Fine.
Howard, this is Robin. I have a question for you. I know that some folks have guardians, and that means that they make decisions for the person, that they've gone to court, and then it's been decided the person is unable to make decisions for themselves. And I'm wondering okay.
Oh.
Hi, this is Robin. I understand we need to make sure the mic is near us before we say something. I know that some people have guardians, which means that someone, probably a family member, has, or it could be the state, has gone to court to determine that a person with a disability is unable to make decisions for themselves about major functions in their lives. How does HDRC deal with it when someone has a guardian and is not happy with the way things are going? Or what happens if a guardian comes to you and wants assistance?
That's an excellent question, Robin, and I think we've had many inquiries from individuals who have had guardians and they didn't like the way their guardian was handling stuff. I can only give a general answer in saying that we handle all of our cases on a case-by-case basis. It depends on what the situation is. Given our responsibility, our mandate, our mission to protect the rights of persons with disabilities, if an individual feels that they're being abused or neglected, that's a priority service for our agency, and we would investigate all incidents of abuse and neglect if there's probable cause. That's what the federal statutes say, probable cause. And probable cause means that it's for us to determine, whether or not. And I will say that for just about any reason, we will open up a case and investigate incidents of abuse and neglect. We've had situations involving individuals who they feel their guardian is spending their Social Security money on stuff that's not intended for them. I think that would be a good example. Our agency encourages independent living to the greatest extent possible, and for individuals to be able to make decisions on their own to the greatest extent possible. guardianship is a legal matter where the judge, only a judge can. And by the way, that kind of raises another question of, well, what do I have a guardian if there's been no court hearing? The answer is no, unless you're under 18. Your parents are your guardian. But if you're over the age of 18, the only way you have a guardian is if there's been a legal court hearing and a judge says so. And there are legal documents that support that. But we have on occasion, and this isn't common, but we have on occasion undone guardianship. And that would be something that we would be more likely to be involved in a case. We're for the least restrictive setting, and that is really, you know, the individual should be encouraged. If you believe that your rights are being violated in that respect, that's something that you might want to contact our agency. But you know, it depends on a case-by-case basis. But we have had court hearings where we've allowed. I had an individual who just felt that it was too restrictive, and she demonstrated the ability to me to be able to ride the bus and to also be able to manage her own funds. There are different kinds of guardianship. Maybe, well, a full guardianship restricts the rights of an individual to everything, basically, that all the decision-making comes to that individual, which is mostly a parent. But there are less restrictive forms of guardianship, like guardianship of the property, or guardianship of the finances, where maybe the individual can't balance a checkbook. I mean, I can't balance my checkbook. And so that individual would be charged with the responsibility of making financial decisions. There's also, some of you may know this, representative payees, where Social Security mails the check, direct deposit to a person who will make those financial decisions. So those are all the examples. Yeah, we encourage the least restrictive, and if you feel that under the current situation your guardian is, and that you're capable of making decisions, well, that may be something you may want to contact our agency to assist you with.
Okay, thanks for that. We've got another question, and it says, concerning advanced directives, what do you mean by life support?
There we go. Button's on. That means I'm talking. Okay, life support. Good question. There is a provision in the advanced directives document that we have which spells out whether, to put it generally, directly, whether or not the doctor should pull the plug and take you off life support. Maybe you're attached to machines that are keeping you alive, keeping you breathing, that kind of thing, or whether or not your life should be sustained, or you should stay on life support. Also, it involves irrigation and hydration. You may be hooked up to an IV where liquids are pumped into your system, which helps sustain you and keep you alive. You know, this is the kind of stuff that we really don't like to talk about or think about, but this is the thing that when you read an advanced directive and you see all the stuff that that pertains to, that relates to having an advanced directives, you know, I mean, this includes going to a hospital where you might not have had a positive experience, or being assigned a doctor that you didn't like, or being prescribed medications where you had harmful side effects, or you know, again, as Dwight mentioned, donating your organs. This could be a religious matter for some of you. You might feel that your religion forbids this. You would talk to a priest, maybe, perhaps consult with a priest before you would complete your advanced directives. You know, all these things involve decision making, and you want to put this down on a legal document before it becomes a situation where you no longer have the control. our position, our mission is that, individuals with disabilities should have control over these kinds of decisions that need to be made.
All right, thanks for that answer. We've got another question. How extensive is the HDRC intake process? Is there a waiting list to get help?
No, we do not have a waiting list. However, so let me explain the intake process, because a lot of people want to know this. We have intake officers, and that would be to Bryant Yabui in the morning and Mary Baca in the afternoon. And you would contact the agency and state your issue and request assistance. From that point, it goes to our intake committee, which is composed of Bryant and Mary and Ann Collins, our Director of Client Services, and our Executive Director, Lou Erdeshik. And those individuals alone make decisions. Dwight and I, we can't say no. We'd love to open up just about every case that comes to us, but this is why we have an administration that tells us this is what you will do. Then the advocate is assigned, or an attorney. If it's a legal matter, an attorney might be assigned a case. And then we send out a letter indicating to that individual that we've opened up a case. Where the intake committee has determined that we will not accept that case, then that individual would get a letter saying that their case has been denied. Now, if that individual's case has been denied, we send them, along with that letter, information where they have the right to file a grievance. Not a whole lot of people do that, but they should know that they have the right to file a grievance if they feel that, they should have a case, that we should assist them. They have the right to do that. And there's a grievance process that takes place following that. That's about as much as I can speak to the issue of intake. Any advocate can make a referral to intake. Okay, so Dwight and I, if you call us directly and say, I can't get a hold of Brian, or Brian's on vacation, he was going to call me back, or Mary isn't answering my messages, or I called the agency, you can call us directly as well, and we have an intake sheet, and we can write down basic information. We take down your name, your address, your phone number, any contact information, cell number, email, address, birth date, ethnicity, because we have to report all this to the feds, and who is reporting this to us, this information. Maybe you're having a relative provide this information to us as well, and what the issue is. Okay? Oh, Dwight has something to add.
Not every client that calls to our office fits into our definition of who we can work with. I had somebody who saw me on the street yesterday who had a legal issue. Fortunately, our intake worker, Bryant, is an attorney, and he can oftentimes refer you to another agency to help you with an issue that may not be related to what we can do. But I know that Mary and Bryant, who are intake workers, oftentimes will give you advice in terms of where else you might go if we cannot help you. That's a very important issue, and I'm a social worker by training, so I find that really an important issue.
This is Robin. I noticed that you have the word disability in your title, and I assume that people have to somehow prove that they have a disability. Is there any kind of proof, or do they simply state it?
That's an excellent question as well. There are disabilities that are obvious, and there are disabilities that are obvious disabilities. For example, if an individual comes into our office in a wheelchair, I don't think we're going to do a background check or request medical documentation. I can't remember in the 14 years that I've worked in this agency where I've asked anybody to prove their disability. So, I think that, we reserve the right to ask if we need to, remember that our funds require us to only serve individuals with disabilities. So, for example, if somebody comes in, and this has happened with a broken arm or a broken leg, that's not a permanent disability. We only serve people with persons with permanent disabilities.
Well, the idea, this is Robin again, the idea of a disability has changed over time. And I'm wondering if someone has a chronic health problem, things that they can no longer do related to having diabetes or hypertension or other types of chronic medical conditions. Is that a disability?
When we talk about disability, our agency goes by the definition of that the Americans with Disabilities Act puts out. So whatever is defined as a disability under the ADA, that's a good question you point out, Robin, because I'm a diabetic. And under the Americans with Disabilities Act, diabetes was not really covered because if a person's diabetes is controlled by medication, the original Americans with Disabilities Act, passed in 1990, did not address this population, nor did they address persons with epilepsy. So there were a couple of legal court cases that brought this to attention, and Congress revised the Americans with Disability ADA to include this population. So I'm happy to say now that it does that. It also specifically addresses functional limitations. You know, the ability to bathe, clothe, and feed oneself, the ability to navigate the community, to get around in the community, the ability to live independently in the community. So there are 7 functional limitations indicated. In the state of Hawaii, if you have 2 of those functional limitations, it qualifies you before age 22 as having a developmental disability. But again, it can be so technical, but we do serve all disability groups as defined under the Americans with Disabilities Act. That includes persons with chemical sensitivities. I once assisted an individual who only felt comfortable in a hospital setting. Persons with HIV also qualifies as a person with a disability, and we serve those populations as well. We have a number of different programs which covers, I believe, every disability as defined under the Americans with Disabilities Act. One law, it's actually 4 laws. We for the purposes of this webinar, we're talking about PATB, which is Protection and Advocacy for Traumatic Brain Injuries. But the first law that came out was Protection and Advocacy for Developmental Disabilities. The next law that came out was, well, you know, the persons with developmental disabilities aren't the only disability group. What about the others? And so the next law was Protection and Advocacy for Individuals with Mental Illness, or PAMI. Well, what about individuals who are neither DD nor MI? Well, then the next law that came out was Protection and Advocacy for Individual Rights, or PAIR. And then finally, the last law, the most recent law, to protect individuals with TBI who, as we know, we're not getting services or underserved, is the PATB law, Protection and Advocacy for Traumatic Brain Injuries. So, as far as we know, that pretty much covers all persons with disabilities and all chronic conditions.
All right. The next question says, of all services that seem to be fragmented all over town, is there a service coordinator for disabled people?
Excellent question, and the answer is no. Actually, that's one of the reasons why PATB came into being. This is why this law was passed by Congress, the Protection and Advocacy for Traumatic Brain Injury Act. And it's unfortunate. We've gone to the legislature to try to pass bills to encourage services. There is a neurological committee that meets as a result of one of the bills that was passed at the legislature. Neurotrauma Board is what it's called, that addresses TBI and the kind of services that are needed, that are required. Unfortunately, there is no one area. I've had clients who were served by the Adult Mental Health Division, and I've had clients served by those individuals served through the Developmental Disabilities Division, and neither agencies have been able to provide the kind of assistance that persons with TBI require. The Adult Mental Health Division just prescribed a bunch of medications. The DD Division went strictly by medical definitions and not really so much in the social interpersonal kind of services that we all could benefit from. So there are services that are still fragmented. Even I think the best example would be a soldier who ends up having to be provided services at Tripler. Even those services are fragmented. In the military, everything is taken care of, but what we find is that some individuals are found not to even qualify for those services, and we have to go to hearings. And that's another point I want to make. Kind of another issue is that we always encourage individuals who receive any kind of government services, that includes these fragmented services, to exercise your right to appeal. Okay, in all of the services that are provided by government, you have appeal rights. A lot of people think that, I shouldn't exercise my right to appeal. I should just, accept authority's decision and, they know what's best, right? Well, not necessarily. You have appeal rights, and we encourage you to do that because more times than not, you're going to win on an appeal. Depends on what the situation is, but always exercise your appeal rights. But yes, these services have been fragmented. They continue to be fragmented. In addition to the individual's advocacy that our agency provides, we also provide systemic advocacy. That's a systems case that can benefit a whole class of individuals, such as persons with traumatic brain injury, and that includes going to the legislature, legislative advocacy. And I would encourage all of you to, during the legislative session, take a look at what bills are available so that you can provide your testimony, and even better than that, appear in person and inform the legislators your concerns about these fragmented services. Because the only way that we're going to increase or make better these services is to bring this to the attention of people who make decisions to provide these kinds of services to this population.
So in essence, the individual is asking about service coordinators. We don't really have service coordinators in the systems. The Department of Health Developmental Disabilities Division has case managers, and the mental health system has case managers, but you have to apply for and be eligible for those specific services. And there is no case manager or service coordinator for folks with traumatic brain injury. There, and Howard says yes. Okay, so the next question is, does the ADA cover persons with mental health issues such as depression?
Short answer is absolutely yes. It is considered, that is included in the Americans with Disabilities Act. There are a variety of, and I do not profess to be a mental health professional. By the way, I also have to put out the disclaimer that neither Dwight or myself are attorneys, so we can't make any legal decisions. But I can tell you that in the area of depression and the number of consumers we've served, depression has a number of diagnoses. There's manic depression. There's anxiety disorders. There's all kinds of classifications, and it's also known as an Axis 1 diagnosis by the psychiatric profession. And so depression, yes, depression is covered under the Americans with Disabilities Act. Thanks.
Okay, here's a question that's probably specific to an individual. It says, how can I get therapy past 6 years after TBI and stroke?
Well, I'm not quite sure what the question is. Past 6 years. So in other words, you experienced a TBI and stroke 6 years after it occurred, and I think that there are a lot of resources that can guide you in that direction, depending on the severity and what service is needed, and also issues of insurance. Is this something where you have private insurance? Most of the time, many referrals are made as a result of visiting your personal care physician. And I don't want to make that assumption that all of you listening today or watching this webinar have a personal care physician, but that is the person most commonly who refers you to all the other services, such as Rehab Hospital of the Pacific. In my experience, Rehab Hospital of the Pacific provides, a large number of services, but you may not even see Rehab Hospital of the Pacific. Maybe Queens or Straub or Castle might be able to provide the kind of services that you need as well. So that's one way of doing that, of accessing those services, would be through your primary care physician.
This is a case that sounds like it would probably be best if the individual called your office and went through intake to see if they could speak with someone about their specific case, yeah? Okay, so that's what we'd suggest. Okay, we have one more question, maybe two. We have one person who's asked, states that the legislature left out direct services in their law because they didn't want to pay for services for folks who have traumatic brain injury. So when the neurotrauma fund was put into place, I think, I'm interpreting, and I hope the individual let me know if this is incorrect, but the neurotrauma fund does not allow for direct service costs for people with traumatic brain injury. It provides for research and education for people about neurotrauma issues, and neurotrauma is stroke, folks with spinal cord injuries, or traumatic brain injuries. And this individual is asking, is there any way to change that situation?
Yes, there certainly is a way. There are probably several ways, but when I spoke before about legislative advocacy, systems advocacy, something that would benefit a whole class of individuals, that would be this issue. Now, I can recall 2 years ago when the legislature, okay, so the way it works is there is this neurotrauma fund that is collected from individuals who are served speeding citations on their motorcycles. And so there's money put into the fund. Well, this fund had not been tapped for a long time. And when the state was financially tapped a couple of years ago, they wanted to take money out of that fund. So now here you're talking about providing services or expanding services, but the legislature actually wanted to take money out of that fund, which was a couple of $1 million. So our agency was vehemently opposed to that issue, and we testified, and along with a number of individuals, the Department of Health found another pot of money to borrow money from, and they left the trust fund alone. So one way to address providing services or expanding services would be to go to the legislature, get a legislator to sponsor a bill, and get the bill passed, and get the bill signed into law. These are not easy things. It took a number of years just to get the neurotrauma board up and running. It took a number of years to get the neurotrauma trust, the fund, available. So it takes legislative advocacy to do that. Our agency would be willing to assist you if this is something that is a major concern and you would like to see a legislator sponsor a bill to support these services. That's something you could contact our agency to assist you with.
Okay, well, this is Robin. We seem to have finished all the questions, and we are right up against the time that we need to end our seminar if we don't get any other questions right away. Do we have any final comments by Howard and Dwight?
Well, we'd like to thank you very much for attending today's webinar. I also want to thank a couple of people. I want to thank Robin, and I want to thank Ronald, and I want to thank Mari for all of their assistance in helping putting this all together. Couldn't have done it without you. I'll turn it over to Dwight.
Thanks very much for this opportunity to share information with those in Hawaii who have a disability, who may need our services. I want to remind you folks that we do have some information in languages other than English. We even have information for the blind as well, in Braille. So if you know someone who speaks a language other than English and they need our services, and some have been, my specific job is doing outreach to that population, especially the Micronesian population, a very growing population here in Hawaii. Filipino population is very large, and the Spanish-speaking population is a growing population as well. So right now, these are some of the groups that we are working on. Doesn't mean we're not going to work with others, but these are the ones we're working on right now. So if you know someone who speaks Spanish, speaks Ilocano or Tagalog, or speaks Chuukese or Marshallese, who has difficulty in communicating in English, and they have a disability, or any language, have them contact our office, and we will be glad to share information with them. Thanks for this opportunity.
This is Robin. Thank you to the participants that we have attending the seminar. This is a seminar for you to ask questions and locate resources. So thank you for taking your time to be part of this. And we want to let you know that we are recording this session, and we will make it available with the slides on the Hooikaika website, so you can refer other people to it as well. Again, thank you, and we're going to end. Aloha.